Hi, everyone. I'm Patricia Lady. I'm a marketing manager with InfoZone. Welcome to today's webinar with InfoZone and TimeXtender. The topic is how modern organizations get insights from data. And first, that is Aron Svedin from InfoZone. He's a business area manager in business intelligence. Over to you, Aaron.
Patricia. Hello, everyone. Like Patricia said, I'm Aaron Svedin and working here at InfoZone. So I will start who are we at InfoZone to actually address this question, how modern organizations get insights from data. And we are an international consultant company located in US and in Sweden in Europe, with offices in Chicago and New Jersey in US, and in Sweden, for example, in Stockholm, which is the capital. We cover several business areas, from system development, business intelligence, to infrastructure, where we both manage whole IT environments at clients, both on-prem and in the cloud. But we also support with expertise in specific problems when needed. We work together with several partners, such as Microsoft, Qlik, Vislib, and of course, TimeXtender, which is why we're here today. We believe there is no need to recreate the wheel over and over again and spend time on inefficiencies such as finding bugs in scripts, Google a good way to implement a function like incremental load, and so on. That is why we strongly believe that using a tool like TimeXtender to help you build your data warehouse is something every organization should at least consider before starting to build their new modern data platform. Today, most companies realize they have a need to build a data warehouse, which is usually quite a huge job. It requires several highly skilled resources, and on top of that, coordination, both coordinating the team of technicians, but also someone to translate the business needs to solutions that the technical team could then implement with good results. All of this creates complexity. So what if you can implement a sophisticated data warehouse with fewer resources and do this in a shorter time? Here is one client case here in Sweden, Din Bil, which is the car reseller of Porsche and the brands belonging in the same group, such as Volkswagen, Audi, Skoda. They had an old Qlik environment, which they decided to replace and wanted to build a data warehouse in a more modern way. Even with a small team, they managed to build in just 3 months a platform which was way better than what they had built over the last 15 years. Jacob, who was leading this project, before came from a controller position with very good knowledge of the business side, and he managed to implement most of this platform by himself. Looking from outside, I can say it included quite a lot of complexities, which he managed to solve with the help of TimeXtender. This meant that Din Bil, they reduced the time from idea to insights, which is still true today. When new ideas arrive, the time to insight is very short. This has increased their productivity, which also led to lower costs. So to explain how all of this is possible, I will now let Joseph Treadwell at TimeXtender explain more. So please, Joseph, I hand over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Aaron. Let me go ahead and present my screen now. So the question here is, how do modern organizations get insights from data? Or another way to say that is, how do modern organizations perform analytics? But before we get into that, I want to start by let's talk about what is modern analytics. What does that actually mean? Well, it means a number of different things. Number one, organizations get into analytics in order to try to obtain increased productivity, right? How can you find the right data points to answer the right questions to make your data make your business more efficient? Another benefit that you get from analytics is reducing cost. So how to take what was once a very expensive process, how to find the different areas in that process where you can create efficiencies and reduce costs for that. but also find insights, right? Find out what areas can your business grow, what locations would be a great place to open a new business, a new warehouse, right? So finding these insights in your data, that is what modern analytics is really all about. So how is modern analytics actually achieved? Well, most people that are working in analytics and doing business, they get exposed to the dashboards, right? The visualizations, the bar charts, the pie charts, all of the different pretty pieces where we're actually finding these insights and seeing and consuming this data. It's typically through Click dashboards, Power BI dashboards, Tableau dashboards, things like that. But in order to make all of those dashboards possible, effective, and efficient for an organization, it requires much more than just that visualization software. We actually need a lot of plumbing behind the scenes to make that possible. So what does this architecture look like? Well, in the first stage, we have on the far left here in the diagram, you can see we have a number of different data sources. And this is where all of your business applications are storing their data. And this might be in a set of files. This might be in a cloud-based SaaS application. This could be potentially social media posts, LinkedIn ads, all of these different areas that we might be doing marketing, or it might be part of our ERP, our CRM systems, right? Storing that data. We want to be able to get access to that data. So the first stage in the analytics is ingestion, bringing that data from those different source systems, bringing them into a centralized location and storing them. Now, modern organizations are typically doing this in a data lake format. You might be familiar with the terms like Hadoop. A data lake is essentially built off of Hadoop technology, bringing that data in, storing it in a very highly scalable way. So Hadoop technology, data lake technology is highly scalable. So it can grow to nearly infinite scale without you having to modify or patch servers, which makes it very, very efficient. It's also very inexpensive. So you're paying a fraction of the price that you might pay for hard drives on servers, for example. The next stage is consolidation, right? So we've brought all that data in. Now we have our different data sources all brought in, but we need to bring them together to create a single version of truth. So that's where we consolidate these different data sources to create this single version of truth in the area that we call the data warehouse. Now, these processes are very complex, typically take months or even years to create with many, many different consultants because it spans a wide degree of various expertise. Typically, you have to write thousands and thousands of lines of code in order to generate the different procedures required to bring this data together. And then there's a third area, the modeling area. So modeling this data into curated data sets that makes it easy for users to consume. You want to be able to look through and browse through very specific and relevant data sets that make sense to you in your business, in your department even. So you can bring those data sets into a visualization and then start actually gaining insights in that data. So how does an organization even achieve an architecture like this? How do you even get to the point where you can build this without having an immensely large business and a $1 million data and analytics budget? Well, there's a number of different ways, and we're going to talk about that today. The first way that organizations do this is through automation, right? Eliminating coding. You don't want half of your data and analytics staff sitting around writing code all day, potentially taking months to perform a single transformation. The next area is optimization, ensuring that the data is loaded from the source into these different layers and gets to your dashboards as quickly as possible. How can you ensure that these transformations, these loads are happening efficiently, and the data is being presented quickly. And then the third is documentation. A very significant part of the data estate is being able to provide documentation around that, understanding where your data is coming from, where it's going to, who has access to it, ensuring that you're going to be compliant with regulations like GDPR and other regulations that we're seeing coming out in different areas of the world now. And this is where I like to introduce TimeXtender. TimeXtender is an automated, low-code, no-code data estate builder that allows organizations to build solutions like this 10 times faster than the traditional approach. By eliminating coding, we're able to build these solutions, get access to data, bring that into the first layer that we call the operational data exchange. Bring data into the data lake by selecting from over 200 different data connectors, and then using low code, no code to integrate this data, define how the data comes together, define these different data points, and then finally bring them out and define these data marts or data sets so we can make relevant data areas for users that then, of course, connect to the final dashboards. And then across all of this, having the use of the metadata, understanding this data, where it's coming from, who has access to it, and then using that data to make intelligent decisions. So let's start with that first step. We want to use automation, right? We want to stop coding and we want to start building. So let's say an organization needs to deliver new insights into a report as quickly as possible, right? So they have a report, and the manual approach to this is you're going to have a very large, highly skilled teams. You typically might have those skilled in Hadoop and Spark technologies in order to bring data into the data lake and then organize that data lake in a way that's efficient. Of course, you also need to operationalize that data. You don't just need to bring it in once. You need to ensure that new data that's created is brought in every day or every hour, however often you want that data to be refreshed. And this process, of course, can be very tedious and very time consuming, writing, again, as I said, thousands and thousands of lines of code by hand. Not only do you have to write this code, but then managing this code and ensuring it's staying up to date is very, very tedious, very time consuming. So here we have the opportunity for automation. TimeXtender's WYSIWYG approach to data management, it's able to automate the creation of these scripts. So instead of writing code, you're able to define in a user interface how you want that data to be brought in, how you want that data to be manipulated. And then by defining these data models and the data model creation, TimeXtender will then generate all the code for you and then push this out to whatever desired target platform that you might have in mind. Really going to reduce these types of tasks from a number of months down to a number of days. So let's go ahead and take a look what a modern organization might experience if they were using TimeXtender. So we have an organization here, they're analyzing purchases. Let's take a look at their dashboard. So here we have a modern analytics dashboard. In this case, I'm using Power BI. Organizations might also be using other platforms like Qlik or Tableau, but the process is generally the same. So this organization is analyzing their purchases over the last few years, and they want to see here, they see all their purchases and that's great, but they want to understand in what areas, what different categories are they actually spending their money. And so we look over here into our available fields and we'll see, well, we have our suppliers. So theoretically, we could just add our supplier name onto there. And we could see this broken down by supplier name. And that's okay, but that doesn't really tell us the categories because we may be buying products in different categories that are from the same supplier. We want to understand in what types of products are we really spending our money in. And so let's go ahead and take a look at how we can add these additional insights into our data estate using low code, no code. So we'll jump over into TimeXtender. This is the TimeXtender user interface. I'm just going to briefly give you a walkthrough of what you're looking at here. On the left-hand side is what we call the Solution Explorer. This is a high-level overview of your project. We have the, as I mentioned, the operational data exchange. This is the area that you'd manage the ingestion of data and the data lake. Here we have our data warehouses, with our modern data warehouse being the core of that area. And you can see that open in this tab right here. This is our modern data warehouse. And then we have our semantic layer with multiple different semantic models. For this case, we're going to be looking at our purchasing semantic model. And this is where we're analyzing all of the purchases that are being made by our organization. So here in the data warehouse tab, I'm going to expand our purchase transactions table. And we also have here our suppliers table. So we can take a look. We have a lot of different fields that we can add, but we can take a look through here and we see, unfortunately, that it doesn't have any category information. It doesn't have any way for us to categorize our different suppliers or these different transactions to show in what areas are we actually spending our money. So let's look through our operational data exchange. And this is essentially what we're seeing here is a catalog of our data lake, all of our different data sources, where that data is coming from. We can look through our USA data source here and hit search. And this is going to search through all of the tables that we have in our data lake. As we can see, this list is fairly extensive. And so what we want to do is we want to narrow that down here. So I'm going to look at simply supplier information. I'll hit search, and we've been able to narrow that down. As we can see, what jumps out to me right at the top here is actually supplier categories. So how do we integrate supplier categories into our existing data pipelines? Well, as I mentioned, the traditional approach is to write potentially hundreds, if not thousands of lines of code to manipulate the tables, create that ETL script. And then, of course, we have to ensure that that runs at the set time. With TimeXtender, we try to simplify that as much as possible. So I can simply drag and drop supplier categories here onto the data warehouse. And then I can integrate that data into my existing data warehouse here. So I'm going to expand these two tables. I have supplier category ID. I'm going to create a relationship here to our supplier table, and that's going to be right there. And so I'll create that relationship, and then I can simply drag and drop supplier category name and click OK. So here we have supplier category name now added onto my suppliers table. And then what I can do is simply just bring that out to my semantic model, drag and drop supplier category name right here onto my semantic table. And now I'll have that available in my Power BI report. So you can see that by using a drag and drop user interface, drastically going to reduce the amount of time spent on tedious ETL tasks. Let's talk about the second area to optimize in a data warehouse, and that's for optimizing performance. Now, data and reports and dashboards need to be as timely and up-to-date as possible. And how do we ensure that data flowing from our data sources into our data lake, data warehouse, and our semantic models is flowing through as quickly as possible? And that, of course, is to use automation to auto-optimize the data loading and performance, reorganizing and parallelizing these table loads to ensure these pipelines data continues to flow in as quickly as possible. Let me show you how that's going to work in TimeXtender. Now that I've made all of my different adjustments and transformations here in my data warehouse, I can simply click deploy and execute. This is going to do a few things. First of all, it's going to create a new version of my project. So I'm going to say here, I added supplier categories, hit save, and this is automatically going to generate all that code for me, push that code out to the underlying platforms, and then execute. So it's going to pull that data from the sources into the data lake, into the data warehouse tables that it just created. And load that data, of course, into my semantic models as well, so I can access them directly from Power BI, Qlik, or Tableau. And you can see it's doing this in 5 parallel threads. And it's reorganizing these threads to ensure the greatest efficiency possible. So TimeXtender is leveraging that metadata to ensure that your business users are getting access to their data quickly. Now, typically in a traditional scenario, you'd have to define triggers. You'd have to define which tables are executed based on their dependencies and figure all of that out yourself and define that manually. TimeXtender is able to do that all with simply the click of a button. Let me jump over here to back to my dashboard. Now that I've completely refreshed my data warehouse, we can hit refresh here, and I have now my supplier category. I can simply bring that over into my model here, and now we can see all of our purchases by category, right? So that's really going to break that down for us. It's going to give us those insights quickly and efficiently, exactly as we need it. Let's move on then to the next part of our session here, is being able to provide documentation. Now, of course, we've provided these insights to our users, and that's great. But what happens when the government auditors come knocking on our door? What happens when our IT department comes knocking on our door and wants to know, hey, are we securing our data? Who has access to it? Also, what happens when the CEO who you're giving these reports to says, hey, how come this doesn't match my previous reports? What's different? Where are you getting this data from? How are you getting access to this data? Well, in TimeXtender, that process becomes very straightforward. We can simply open up our semantic model here, or really any area of data. We can click on any data area, right click, go to visualization, and show data lineage. So we can expand this and we can show exactly where these different data points are coming from, tracing it from our Power BI reports through the different lookup tables. As you can see here, we're going from our table called suppliers to a table called supplier categories, coming all the way from our ODX, which is our data lake in TimeXtender. So being able to see that lineage, have that very clear, and tracing that data back makes troubleshooting, makes answering these questions that much faster for our users. But of course, there's also the auditing concerns. We need something a little bit more than just pure data lineage. And for that, we can go ahead and create our documentation. So with just the click of a button, I'm able to create 149 pages of documentation for our entire data warehouse. We can click through it. Here we have fully hyperlinked table of contents. We can see all of our table relations, data lineage, transformations, all of our lookups and rules are all in here, including even business descriptions. So we have that available now to us with just the click of a button. Super important to have that automated, because that process is very, very time consuming. Right. So now let's talk about the summary. So what did we do? We looked at how modern organizations get insights from data, and they do this with a number of different ways. First of all, there is a significant amount of architecture that needs to go behind the scenes to support data and analytics. And how does an average business be able to get to that point, to build that architecture? Well, we have to eliminate coding, we have to optimize performance, and we have to have instant documentation. So I'd like to open up the floor now for any questions. If any of you have questions, please feel free to drop those questions in the chat, or go ahead and just unmute yourself, and I'd be happy to hear any questions that you might have.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I was just wondering if I have to be on a Microsoft platform.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we did talk about quite a few different Microsoft platforms. We have SQL Server, Data Lake, these different pieces that are supported by Microsoft and in Azure. So the question is, do you have to be on a Microsoft platform to support this? And the answer is no. We can actually connect to all different types of data sources. Now, your target databases do need to be supported by Microsoft. But the source databases where your data sits now doesn't have to be within a Microsoft infrastructure. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, hi. I have a questions about, so you just mentioned about database. My is relate to like the database itself in the sense that, for example, if today we are using like on-prem, database, but thinking about migrating them to the cloud or maybe do like a hybrid, is it with, TimeXtender and also the other like data tool, is it something that can be easily done? Or if not, then what should we think about before we make the switch to go fully or maybe just hybrid?
So you're asking, is that something that TimeXtender supports, whether you can make the switch from on-premise into the cloud? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, and great question. And the answer is absolutely. I'm going to just show this diagram here briefly. The beautiful thing about using a builder platform like TimeXtender is TimeXtender is actually generating all of that code for you. So you have these this business logic, these certain transformations that are going to be unique to your business. Now, in a traditional method, you would code that business logic into the underlying database platforms themselves. So you'd actually have to code that and lock yourself into a specific database platform. If you wanted to move out to a different database platform, you'd of course have to rewrite all of that code. Well, the beautiful thing about TimeXtender, because it's generating that code automatically, you can simply change your connection string from an on-prem SQL Server to an Azure Data Lake to an Azure Synapse Analytics database, and then benefit from those highly scalable cloud solutions without having to rebuild, without having to rewrite any of your business logic. So yes, absolutely, it handles that. Great question. Okay, well, if there are any questions, now is the time to ask them. Of course, you can always reach out to InfoZone if you have more questions, but I will go ahead and hand it over to Patricia.
Well, thank you so much, Joseph, and thank you, Aaron, for the insights today. If you want to learn more, you can visit our website and also contact us directly via email, or we have a contact form on our website as well. Thank you so much, and have a nice afternoon, everybody.